Hello, people of the interwebs. My name is Derek Gilmore, and welcome back to another YouTube video. Here we have our post Week 2 NFL Power Rankings. Week 1 was very interesting. Week 2 doubles the amount of information that we have, and unfortunately, this was a very difficult set of rankings to make because most of the teams that we thought were towards the top probably are still going to stay there, but they looked a lot worse than they maybe thought that they would. So let's get right into it. Starting out at number 1, we have Kansas City jumping up a spot. They got the job done against Kansas City. They beat them by 1 point at home. That call at the end of the game, that PI, watching it live when they threw the flag, I was pretty upset about it, but watching it back, that was definitely the right call there. Cincinnati really controlled most of that second half. But they end up getting the job done. They come up for that final drive, and you just know Patrick Mahomes is going to come out. He's going to do what they need to do, and they're going to win that game. You kind of just had this sixth sense that he was going to do that like he always does. Not like a huge gap now between them and the other teams. They're really moving up because San Francisco looked bad, and again, a lot of these other top teams look bad. Unfortunately, they do lose Isaiah Pacheco for 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured fibula, I believe. Expect them to be more pass happy and maybe a little more explosive as, they have been in recent years. Next week, they're going to be on the road against Atlanta. They are 3-point favorites on Sunday Night Football, although I do expect that game to be pretty tough. Not sure if I'm going to end up betting on that game. Number 2, dropping one spot, the aforementioned San Francisco 49ers. They lose 23-17. This game really ends up being the trap game that I sort of warned about in my last video. I did think San Francisco would still ultimately come out, but Minnesota really controlled this game. They looked better for 3/4 of this game. Brian Flores has that defense for Minnesota flying around. You look at the box score, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, they get some good production, but this game was really, really all Minnesota. Really, the only reason this was even a 6-point game was Fred Warner was crazy on defense. He forced a fumble, got a pick, kept them in this, ending 2 drives there. Deebo goes down, Kittle goes down. Also another reason why I'm dropping them a spot, but I can't quite drop them lower than this right now. But yeah, now it's time for Brock Purdy to see if he can earn his money. It's put up or shut up time, so we'll see what he does in the next couple weeks. Next, they are at the Rams, who are 0-2. Don't quite remember the spread for this one, but I expect them to cover whatever it is, even though it's a road game. Unfortunately, the Rams, pretty much everybody on that team has died already, so should not be an interesting game. Next, at number 3, the Houston Texans are going to jump up 4 spots. You look at the box scores for these first 2 games, and they've really only won those 2 games against Indy and Chicago by a combined 8 points, but they have looked really good. The yards aren't quite there in the passing offense just yet. CJ Stroud hasn't gone off, but we know that they're capable of that, and the defense is really, really looking good so far. And yeah, again, Kansas City, actually, no, I take that back. Houston really controls this game, like Minnesota did against San Francisco. Joe Mixon gets banged up. Have to keep an eye on that, but he's looked really good in the 2 games he's played so far. Next week, they are at Minnesota. They are 2-point favorites on the road. We're going to talk a little bit more about Minnesota later. Should be an interesting game as well. At number 4, jumping 6 spots, we have the Buffalo Bills, who won 31-10 all the way back on Thursday Night Football. They really just beat the snot out of Miami. They have had this team's number. I think they have won 15 of the last 17 meetings, some crazy statistic like that. Buffalo was very impressive on the ground. That's a part of their offense they haven't really been able to get going outside of Josh Allen in recent years, but James Cook has that, signature game. He gets 3 touchdowns. Does very well for my fantasy team. Was very happy about that. Josh Allen doesn't really even have to do anything. He had 18 pass attempts, and they still, if they don't need Josh Allen, then they can beat up on teams like this. They are going to hold on to a spot this high for a very long time. And yeah, one other thing I want to say is Buffalo's defense They lost Tre'Davious White. They don't really have a lot of name brand talent this year, but they shut down Jalen Waddle. They shut down Tyreek Hill. Neither of them really do anything. Part of that was Tua not looking like a $60 million quarterback. Also see him go down to another concussion. Hopefully he can come back soon, and, wishing nothing but the best for him. But yeah, next week they will host Jacksonville, who has looked terrible so far. Don't have the spread on me right now, but I do expect them to pretty easily win that game. At number 5, dropping 2 spots, we have the Detroit Lions. The story of this game is Aiden Hutchinson, 4.5 sacks. I mean, he was everywhere. I do want to say he was going up against a backup tackle in Justin School, and I guess we learned for Tampa Bay that their right tackle, Luke Gedeke, is very important to their success. But Detroit, even, despite Aiden Hutchinson's performance, they lose. Goff has really not looked like he's looked the last 2 years. He's kind of starting to regress to LA Rams Jared Goff, especially at the end of that tenure there. But also, this team is predicated on not giving up pressure, and teams are getting pressure in Detroit 2 games in. I know it's a small sample size, and that also makes me feel like they can bounce back a little bit. They also got a lot of yards. They got 463 total yards. They just couldn't finish drives. Yes, they haven't looked as good as we thought they would, but I do expect this to get better moving forward. So dropping 2 spots this week, but I do think that they are still in an okay place. Next week, they will host... Actually, no, I apologize. They will be on the road against Arizona, and what is a coin flip game, basically? I don't know how I feel about that. I do think Detroit is better than Arizona, even though Arizona has home field advantage. But, yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, if Jared Goff is going to be who he's been for these first 2 weeks, then, yeah, I think that is a good line, I guess. Number 6, we have the Philadelphia Eagles dropping 2 spots, losing 22-21 to the Atlanta Falcons. This is a game that they should have won. Saquon needs to make that catch. Not a great decision to throw the ball there, but still, that should be an easy completion. Should have been a first down, should have ended the game. Kirk Cousins goes down, and the following drive gets a field goal, touchdown. Don't quite remember, but they take the lead. And then Jalen Hurts, under pressure, and that pass throw just throws it into double, triple coverage, and that ends up ending the game. And yeah, Philly just really pissed this game away. So, I mean, I don't really have a better way to say it, unfortunately. They really did miss A.J. Brown, who I don't think is going to be here next week either. So hopefully Philly can bounce back on the road against New Orleans. They are 2.5-point underdogs, but at least for right now, I still do think they are a touch better than New Orleans. Speaking of which, my number 7 team this week is New Orleans, who is a new addition to this week's power rankings. They beat Carolina 47-16 in the first week, and that was very impressive, but it's against Carolina, who looks like an FCS team. But then they do it again in Jerry World, and they win 44-19. New Orleans is the story of the year so far. The Clint Kubiak hire has been really great. The efficiency is crazy. Derek Carr is pushing the ball deep, which he hasn't done since way back in his even before they were the Vegas Raiders. He was doing this back when they were in Oakland. He looks rejuvenated. And then Dennis Allen doing his thing on defense. Kamara also has 4 touchdowns after, visibly declining for the past 2 years. He looks like a different player. They are hosting Philly this upcoming week. They are 2.5-point favorites. I honestly can't say I have an opinion either way on this game. I feel like 7, though, is a good spot for New Orleans. They've looked amazing, but I don't think the talent necessarily stacks up, and I think as the sample size increases, we are going to see that New Orleans is a cut below these teams. I could eat my words here, but that's how I feel right now. At number 8, we have Baltimore, who drops another 3 spots. Just like Philly, they really just threw this game away. They were up by a touchdown for pretty much most of the fourth quarter, but then they just couldn't do anything to close this game out. It was very, very unfortunate. They've been great offensively moving the ball, even though, what by the score it might seem that way, but their defense is 28th in points. I really think that they're missing Mike McDonald so far this season, and they seem to be having trouble adjusting to his loss. And they did get some pressure, which was interesting to see. Odafe Owe looked really good. Hopefully he can continue that. They kind of need him to step up to replace what Jadeveon Clowney gave them last year. Next, they are at Dallas. They are a 1-point favorite. Baltimore and Dallas, these are two teams that haven't looked as good as we thought. And I think really whoever ends up coming out of that game, we'll see them shoot up the power rankings. And whoever loses, especially if it's not close, we're not going to be talking about them next week. At number 9, I'm going to put Minnesota. As I mentioned earlier, it ended up being a trap game, but honestly, maybe not, because Minnesota looked really good. The final score was a 6-point difference, but Minnesota dominated this game for 3/4 of the way. Justin Jefferson is that 97-yard touchdown before he goes down with the hamstring injury, but he should play in week 3. Aaron Jones looked kind of iffy, but he's got a hip thing going on. Ty Chandler ends up coming in, looks very efficient. Good to see for them. The run game in Minnesota under Kevin O'Connell, they've had a really hard time getting it going, but they can do that. If they can move the ball in that, that part of the offense, then they are going to continue to be a pretty good team, pretty frisky team. And Sam Darnold so far has made a couple mistakes, but he's also looking pretty good. And another one of these stories where these former busts, they get a second shot on a new team and they really just kind of take advantage of it. Minnesota gets a lot of pressure on San Francisco. They get 6 sacks. And yeah, they just look really good. They will go up against Houston this week. They are at home. They are 2-point underdogs. And I think that this is really the game where we find out if they're good or if this is kind of just a flash in the pan. And then at number 10, I'm going to throw Dallas here, dropping 4 spots, but there's just been so much mid in the NFL this year that I'm going to trust the talent and keep them at number 10. Dak didn't look great. Again, they can't run the ball at all. They're giving up deep passing pressure. But again, this is a very talented roster. I do think that they just got down really early against New Orleans. I do think New Orleans is definitively better than them at this point. I definitely could not put Dallas above New Orleans. When you lose by 25, if there was a 10-game sample size, you're probably the worst team, 6 out of 10 times at least. Next week, they'll host Baltimore. And yeah, again, that's just a game of we'll see who's real, we'll see who's bad. Don't really know who I'm going to bet on. If I'm going to bet at all, I think I'm just going to watch it and hopefully see both of these teams play well. Then finally, for our honorable mention, we're going to put Tampa here at 2-0. They go on the road and they beat Detroit. They've looked really impressive offensively. Their backup tackle, again, he gives up 4.5 sacks. That is concerning. But they win despite that. And unfortunately, their run game has not looked good. Rachaad White, he's not a running back. He's a wide receiver. He's averaging 2 yards a carry. I really do think, and I'm going to put a little piece of fantasy advice here. I picked up Bucky Irving this week. I do think he's going to have this job by the end of the year. But their defense, Tampa Bay's calling card, at least what we thought is they would have this middling offense, and I don't even mean that in the bad way. They would have an average offense and a top 10 defense, and that would keep them frisky and potentially would allow them to win the division for the 4th year in a row. But really, it's been the opposite so far. They've been really good on offense and really bad on defense. They give up 460 yards. Teams are moving the ball on them. Yes, they are 2-0, but that does concern me. So that will wrap it up for this week. Going to be coming out a little late. Very busy this week. My previous editing software, when I uploaded it, I didn't like the way it looked, so I had to experiment and try a new one. But thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all of those things, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.